Hello and welcome to Learning with Lulu. So in this video we are going to be doing a summary of chapter 17 in Jane Eyre. If you like this video, if you find it useful, if you want more chapter summaries, not only of Jane Eyre but just of any classic novels, then let me know by liking this video, commenting, and subscribing so that I can keep on putting out more content like this. So, chapter 17 of Jane Eyre, Jane is talking with Mrs. Fairfax, and Mrs. Fairfax mentions that she thinks Mr. Rochester might be gone for a super long time, touring, I believe it is, Europe. And Jane is, she has like kind of confusing, not so confusing, kind of sad feelings about that. But those are shortly alleviated when they learn that actually Mr. Rochester is going to be coming very soon and bringing an entire party, a big group of guests with him. In the meantime, while the house is preparing for not only his arrival, but the arrival of a lot of wealthy people, Jane is keeping close eye on Grace Poole. And she knows that something's definitely going on when she hears two other servants talking about how Grace gets paid more than other servants do. That's just kind of odd, like why would she be getting paid more? Mr. Rochester's group then arrives. Adele is in love. She's very happy to kind of be able to be showing herself off, whereas Jane, being the more like quiet, reserved person she is, she just kind of retreats into kind of a little alcove to observe instead. This Blanche Ingram that Mrs. Fairfax had told her about and that Jane constructed a portrait about is as beautiful as Jane imagined, and because she did the painting of her based off of Mrs. Fairfax's description, she's like, oh wow, like I did a pretty accurate job. And you get a peek into the character of Blanche Ingram. I think at one moment Jane references that she reminds her, or no, that Blanche's mother reminds her of Mrs. Reed. Someone reminds her of Mrs. Reed, which is her detestable aunt, so that's clearly not like a good resemblance. But Blanche is just, it's like she knows she's beautiful and she's rude and she thinks she's better than other people. They get into a conversation about how governesses are terrible, and Jane of course is a governess, and she just flaunts her talents. She's weirdly flirty, not weirdly flirty, she's very flirty but in a really forceful way, and naturally it makes Jane very uncomfortable. And she also just kind of doesn't understand like why Rochester is surrounded with these kind of people. She sees Rochester as something more like herself, and I believe she even she admits her love for him. Watching Rochester and Blanche makes Rochester sing a duet with her. Jane, that's how she comes to realize like she loves him, and she is overcome with emotion. She feels like she's on the verge of tears, so she tries to sneak away, but Rochester stops her and wants her to stay, but he sees that she's about to cry, so he lets her go, but he tells her that she needs to come to the nightly gatherings, the nightly parties, for as long as the guests remain at Thornfield. So then he bids her goodnight, but he stops himself before he says something, and we don't know what he was about to say, but he says like, good night, my, and then he catches himself. So we can kind of read from that he was maybe about to admit something that he wasn't ready to admit either. Per usual with these chapter summaries, I like to read a little bit from the actual chapter just so you can get a little bit of the text itself. So this is where Jane admits that she loves him. She says, He is not of their kind. I believe he is of mine. I am sure he is. I feel akin to him. I understand the language of his countenance and movements. Though rank and wealth sever us widely, I have something in my brain and heart, in my blood and nerves, that assimilates me mentally to him. Did I say a few days since that I had nothing to do with him but to receive my salary at his hands? Did I forbid myself to think of him in any other light than as a paymaster? Blasphemy against nature. Every good, true, vigorous feeling I have gathers impulsively round him. I know I must conceal my sentiments. I must smother hope. I must remember that he cannot care much for me. For when I say that I am of his kind, I do not mean that I have his force to influence and his spell to attract. I mean only that I have certain tastes and feelings in common with him. I must then repeat continually that we are forever sundered. And yet, while I breathe and think, I must love him. So, that is a little snippet, and in addition to the summary from Jane Eyre, chapter 17. Again, I hope you find this video useful and that it helps you whether you're just reading recreationally or academically. Again, to show your thanks, please make sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment your thoughts on this chapter of Jane Eyre, and just your thoughts on the book in general thus far. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back around. Bye.